Hello there. What is going on, everyone? Today I am bringing to you my most wanted units for Legion in 2019. I'm going to be basing this pretty much based on my own kind of wants. This isn't exactly a prediction video because there's a whole lot that we can easily predict that's coming. We know that the Clone Wars was announced at Gen Con, so I do expect that they will announce Clone Wars stuff, and I think there's certain things that are obvious there, but I'm going with my most wanted things, especially things that I think are going to be maybe difficult or maybe even unlikely to implement. So I'm going to talk about those a little bit. I also want to remind you guys about the latest giveaway. It should be announced shortly after New Year's for a Armada pack of Imperial Fighter Squadrons. It's a pretty hard expansion to find, so if you're interested in playing Armada, or if you have gotten into Armada and one of the things holding you back is you can't find an Imperial Squadrons pack, you can enter to win that by being a subscriber and leaving a comment on this or one of my videos. I do run giveaways all the time, and a lot of times they're for all different things. So, if you're not in Armada, you should still subscribe anyway and stay tuned for the next giveaway, which should be in just over a week or so. So I do those all the time. So let's talk about my first most wanted thing, and of course that's going to be the AT-AT. Now, I understand that the size of Legion might make it a little difficult to put an AT-AT. And I've revisited this a little bit with as I've kind of dipped my experience into 40k a little bit with Kill Team. I've talked to people enough that come to find out there are units in that game that just don't move, and that you can even play underneath them that don't really go on a base. And it got me thinking, well, that would be perfect for an AT-AT in that game that just doesn't move. I mean, I've put the Wizards of the Coast AT-AT on my tabletop in Legion matches, and it works fine. It's, I've had Boba Fett fly up on top of the AT-AT and just, basically treat it like almost like a terrain piece that is also a unit. It just seems perfect. And the thing is, I think it just needs to exist. It doesn't have to be a tournament level vehicle. It doesn't have to be something that's like ultra competitive. Make it really expensive. Make it such that you can fit two of them on a board if you want. Like, make it take up a quarter of the board. That's fine. I don't mind. And design your terrain around that. Maybe even just have it be, multiple pieces. Like, I would actually suggest having the legs be, movable, designable, so that you can just place it however you want. So you can make it fit a lot of tabletops, but give it space underneath. Give it, exceptional firepower, obviously, but and make it really strong. Maybe make it almost impossible to kill. It becomes perhaps its own objective. There's just a lot of things that you could do if you take out the idea of it having to be on a base that moves. If you say it's going to be stationary, you've already got stationary units in the game now, so you've already got precedent for a stationary unit. This is a great idea for a stationary unit in Star Wars Legion. Also, if you're running a Grand Army or 1,600 points, absolutely, let's have the battle, the Echo base battle. Let's totally do that. I think it's just a great idea, and it kind of goes back to when Legion was very, very, very first announced. It seemed like, oh, well, now there's a new war game that's going to be ground based. I had always been complaining about wanting X-Wing to have a ground game. It just seemed like the perfect opportunity for them to finally put, AT-ATs in, on our tabletop, and Legion hasn't given us that yet. So it seems like the most missed opportunity they could have ever done. And also now with Armada's Superstar Destroyer, it just seems like a perfect opportunity for them to do it, because now they can do bigger boxes. And since Legion doesn't have to have everything fully assembled in the box, it's just a great way to do it. Let us put the legs on. The legs don't have to come affixed to it. You can shrink the box down a little bit and let us build it up bigger. There's just, I see every reason in the world to do this. Just doesn't have to be something that's designed to win tournaments. It can be inefficient. It can be, not that great. It can be more designed for casual play or fun play or scenario play. Those things are valid. I have a lot of people that love to just show up and play casually because the game is fun, and that's what this would bring even more of into Legion. Additionally, there are people who complain about snow speeders, that they're maybe not as efficient or not really worth all the points. Well, this is just a great opportunity to make snow speeders a little bit more desirable, at least in certain game formats. So I think you just win on multiple levels with doing something like this, although I get that it's hard and it's big and it would be large and it would probably be expensive. I get all of those things. Still want it though. Still want it. Let's see it, FFG. Let's see that ad. Next one is pilots. I want to see a pilot expansion. Pilots on the ground, right? Again, this also kind of comes, again, I'm showing another scene from Empire Strikes Back, but I want to see pilot miniatures, right? Like the other games have them, like the old Wizards of the Coast game has them. I've seen a lot of people do their own, like Wounded Pilot makes a great objective too, go find the Wounded Pilot. You can even put one of those down in your, like a downed pilot model in your example, and it's just a great idea. So, no, pilots would be great. Plus, they have a sidearm too. Luke Skywalker in his pilot's uniform had his blaster, so you can still make them functional. Maybe make them real cheap too if they're not designed for ground combat. Maybe they're going to be a cheaper core option for you. Maybe it's a smaller unit of like just one or two. Maybe you make them specialists that are pilot like Wedge. I have no doubts. And Wedge has been on the ground and, on books and things as well. And he's very, very capable. So maybe you make them ace pilots that are on the ground and are very, very capable. And they have maybe some unique keywords that make them really geared towards objective play. Sounds great to me. But alternatively, this also opens the door for Imperial pilots, namely Inferno Squad, which is a great thing that people would love to see. And it would be a great opportunity to get those Imperial pilot helmets in the game. Just a super, super option. I think it'd be great to have those minis in our collections as well. Definitely want to see this. So, the ball's in your court, FFG. That would be a winner. People would go nuts for this. And I think it'd be another thing that is just so iconic of these pilots, especially the Rebel pilots for some, especially Inferno Squad and the Imperial pilots for others. Having them next to Darth Vader, too, would kind of evoke that Episode 4 wingmen and Darth Vader flying, just marching to the pilot. Just sounds very, very cool to me, and I'd love to see it. Next, I want to talk about Clone Wars. I think a lot of things are very, very likely. I'm sure we're going to see clones in the Clone Wars. I'm sure we're going to see lots of droids in the Clone Wars. I'm sure we're going to see Jedi. I'm sure we're going to see, all the things that you expect to see. But one of the things I think will probably be put on the back burner is a lot of Episode 1 stuff, because specifically the Clone Wars kind of start in Episode 2. Not to say that I don't think they'll do Episode 1 stuff. I'm sure Darth Maul will show up. Because especially since they've already announced Darth Maul for episode or for the Clone Wars and X-Wing. So I'm sure he'll show up. He's a big enough name, and also he was present in the Clone Wars too, so that kind of gives you extra reason to include him. But what I don't think they're going to show a whole lot of are my boys, the Gungans. Now, you're going to laugh here, and a lot of you are about to turn it off. Let me explain, because there's a couple of reasons, and it's that I would like to see Gungans, and I get it, because to do it right, I think would require like a whole wave of stuff. Because yes, I want Gungan ground troops just like these. First off, Gungans aren't all silly and goofy like Jar Jar Binks. Jar Jar Binks was like the exception. That's why he was banished, because he was silly and goofy, right? But the rest of them Look, it factors into Legion. Like one of the formats, you have your 800-point format, and then your 1600-point format. It's called a Grand Army. This is the Grand Army. This is what inspired the name for the 1600-point battle in Legion. So it almost seems like, well, of course we should have a Gungan Grand Army, because we named part of the game after the Gungans themselves. Granted, I get it. It's just it was used in other terms too, but this was the first time you heard it. It was in Episode 1. We have a Grand Army, So, all right. So the naming is a little part of it, but also there also represents some really cool mechanics that can happen with Gungans. Okay. First off, this big shield that covers the army, very, very cool. I also think it should be very, very expensive too. But this big shield is a really cool mechanism, and in gameplay wise, I could see it as being such a thick shield it prevents firepower both in and out. Because if you're going to have a giant shield protecting your entire army, it's kind of unfair. So how do you make it fair? Well, we're protected, but we're also not shooting you. So maybe nothing goes in or out. Shooting, no ranged attack goes in or out. Okay. That's cool, and maybe you have markers that mark it. You could, in theory, you could visualize it by just putting a glass bowl down on your tabletop. However, I think the better way to visualize it is with just little markers on the ground that kind of mark the edges. And I think that'd be a lot of fun. So we've got, that's kind of the rough idea of how to do it. I could see just cutting like a bunch of kind of parenthesis shaped little plastic markers or cardboard markers that you just mark down on the terrain, like where is the shield currently. Okay, and it emanates, and maybe it's got to be like distance 2 from this, from this big giant dinosaur thing. The problem is that giant dinosaur thing would probably have to be its own expansion. Then additionally, you also have to have the troops on the ground, which are probably going to be their own expansion. But then, so you have those two, but you also need certain other characters. Maybe you include those giant wheelbarrow things that are carrying those Boombas. I don't think you'll end up doing those. But you also have those little raptor things. Those actually would make sense, because you could field a full army this way. And it would be, you'd have the troops on the ground, your core unit, your supports could be your guys on the ostriches or whatever they're called. And then your heavies could be the shield generator. And then you can get a lot of stuff that way. Your commander got, you can have Captain Tarpos, or you can have Jar Jar Binks, or you can have them both if you really wanted to dive into it. And that's why I think this is unlikely, because to really flush it out and to have that army, it's going to require like 3 or 4 expansions, probably. And that becomes kind of rough. That becomes kind of difficult. And I would like to see them maybe go in the Rune Wars path. And if you're familiar with Rune Wars, they did something very, very cool I would like to see with Legion, is have, for certain commanders to come in a 2-pack. Basically, Jar Jar Binks would come with like Jar Jar Binks on the ground, and then Jar Jar Binks riding his raptor, like a mounted version and then a ground version. Still a commander, but you have 2 different variations. So you can have, maybe different point costs, maybe different weapons, maybe different speeds. Speeds seems obvious in this case. But depending on to fit your army's blend. I would love to see more of that. Especially this would be a great opportunity to do that. Plus it gives you 2 miniatures to paint. And FFG, hey, business, you can charge more for it too, because you're giving more plastic. But I could also see Jar Jar Binks being like a total goofball commander. Like maybe he actually involves flipping a coin when he does something. Maybe he's got an action that says flip a coin. It either does something really terrible, or you lose an entire unit. Like something you would never bring to a tournament, because you would be literally flipping a coin to see if you win or lose. I'm exaggerating. It wouldn't be quite that strong. But something that would be good, but if you lose the flip, it's the complete disaster for you. So I just think something like that might be fun, but only for fun play, not for competitive, and maybe you run them without Jar Jar Binks if you want to be a little more competitive, right? Maybe you'd run Captain Tarpos. You got other options like that. But that's what I would like to see. I really would like a Gungan army. Also, I want to point out that these guys would have shields, right? They have shields but they don't have guns. So I imagine a core unit would have shields, but no ranged weapon at all. So they would have melee only. And this would be your first core unit that does not attack with ranged weapons. So they would have, just an emptiness for a ranged weapon. But you have the heavy weapons option, which is like a guy with the Boomba, right? That blue ball that they throw. So you could have one guy with a single ranged attack. He probably has to exhaust to use it, because they only have so many of them. And so you could still get a ranged attack version in, but primarily they'd be melee. Very similar to kind of how the Wookiees have the one bowcaster Wookiee. The problem is the Wookiees also have a sidearm. But I would love that. And that would really make these guys maybe not that desirable. Like, I don't want them to necessarily be like a tournament goer's go-to option. I want them to be a fun unit that is maybe viable. It doesn't have to be the best unit ever, right? And of course, with no ranged attack, they're probably not going to be the best unit ever. But because they have shields, maybe they actually get a pretty good defense. Like maybe they get a keyword that if they're defending against a ranged attack, they gain defensive surge. But if it's against a melee attack, they don't have defensive surge, right? So this way, that shield will serve them better against blasters, but not against a punch. So that's, my mindset for that. All right, we also have, I'm going to move on from Gungans now, but I think there's just a whole lot of mechanics that really work well for a Gungan army. They're regular troops, their melee attack could be called Shield Bash, something like that. They could be good in melee. And again, you don't have to give them like 2 red dice per mini for the melee. No, they don't need it that good. Maybe they have 1 red die for, or maybe a black die with offensive surge to crit, or maybe but that'd be a decent. It all depends on the point cost. They don't have to be super great at melee, but they should have pretty good defense if they're all holding shields. All right, moving on past Gungans. It's Rancors. The Rancors, I really, 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 really want Rancors. They did this in Imperial Assault, and it was awesome. I just really want to see Rancors in this game. Make it a little bigger than the Rancor in Imperial Assault. Make it big enough to be able to hold most of your miniatures, which would be great. You could even have it like that, so you can just put the base in its hand. I'm fine with that. Maybe they give it different arms, so you can give it different poses. You can have it swiping, or you can have it holding stuff. You know, and maybe you magnetize the arms. Which arm do I want on there today? Something like that. You know, build it however you want. But it also brings out the concept of having neutral or potentially neutral creatures, right? A Rancor just seems like a really, really cool idea for this game. He seems like he's not too big, so it would totally fit. But at the same time, maybe it would have they have stuff in Imperial Assault that they can't interact, right? And so maybe you have something like that. He won't count for control of objectives, right? Maybe you have a Rancor Keeper with him. Maybe he's Imperial, right? Maybe you have a Rancor Keeper, and if the Rancor Keeper dies, then the Rancor runs loose and attacks like every unit within range 1 with the swipe or something like that. So maybe there's a risk to it. But since they're not really aligned with the Empire or the Rebels, I would actually love to see the idea of like a neutral unit, and that you could either hire or just it spawns. Maybe it's an objective. Maybe now we go back into like custom objectives. Here's a mini that's part of the objective, and it's a loose Rancor on the field, and whoever is able to like subdue the Rancor or whatever, you know, maybe it's through stunning him, or maybe it's through empathy, or maybe it's just a special action. You get an attempt to subdue Rancor. If you've got like 6 troopers out front, be like, whoa buddy. You know, if you get 6 troopers to surround him, maybe you can subdue him. You know, and so like your units gain a action, subdue Rancor. Put 1 subdue token on the Rancor that expires at the end of the turn. If at the end of the turn you have 5 subdue tokens on the Rancor, claim a victory token, you win the game. You know, but you have to get 5 units to all do it in the same turn, or something like that, or at least stop your opponent from doing it. And, you know, as an alternative option, you could just try to kill the Rancor. And, you know, so maybe if you subdue it, you get 2 victory points. And if you kill it, you get 1 victory point, or something like that. There's the possibility of things like that. It'd be fun. I'd love to see a giant Rancor just running around. Maybe they'll come up with better mechanics for it than that. But it'd be cool. But also, if you do a big creature like that, I'll bring in my last one. You open the door for like a crate dragon. Again, would be really, really cool. You know, and especially if you want multiple types of creatures, that's another option. So I think it'd be beautiful to just have creatures, especially you know, non-sentient, neutral, rampaging creatures on the battlefield. Would also potentially pave the way towards true multiplayer games. And I don't mean like homebrewed scenarios, or we'll team up and, you know, we'll both, you know, because then it's still 1 force versus 1 force. What about 3 forces free for all, and we're all trying to capture the crate dragon? You know, seize the crate pearl in the nest, or something like that, and whoever gets it first wins. Everybody's going to rush the center. Does you no good to sit out and let these other guys fight over it, because then you're going to be sitting out and you won't be able to grab the pearl. You know, so my point is, I would love to see some of these neutral monsters. It would be super, super fun. And that's my most wanted for 2019. We'll see what 2019 brings, and maybe that'll influence 2020's most wanted. But I think a lot of these things would bring a lot of fun and really cool stuff into the game. The game is already fun. It's not like it needs an injection of fun, but why not give it an injection of fun anyway, right? That's what I have to say. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Let me know down in the comments below. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. I want to thank my patrons on Patreon as well. You guys are amazing. Definitely help make this possible. I want to thank you all again so much. And as always, have a great day.